Popski's Private Army, the story of No. 1 Demolition Squadron, smallest unit of the British Army. Origins and formation. Popski's Private Army, PPA, officially No. 1 Demolition Squadron, was a distinctive British Special Forces unit formed in Cairo, Egypt in October 1942 by Major Vladimir Peniakoff, a Belgian-born Russian Jewish engineer and polyglot. Peniakoff was privately educated in Belgium and later attended St John's College, Cambridge. However, after studying just 4 terms, he left to serve as a French artilleryman in World War I, where he was wounded in 1917, spending a year in hospital. Following the war, he qualified as an engineer in Grenoble, France, worked in his father's chemical plant in Belgium, and moved to Egypt in 1924 to manage a sugar refinery. Over the next 15 years, he developed extensive experience in desert navigation, crisscrossing the Libyan desert, learned to fly light aircraft, and engaged with Arab tribesmen. Rather notably, he also became a Fellow of the Royal Geographical Society. Libyan Arab Force Commando. At the outbreak of the Second World War, Peniakoff, rejected by both the RAF and Royal Navy, eventually convinced the British Army to give him a commission despite his age and appearance. Initially relegated to garrison duties with the Libyan Arab Force, or LAF, due to his fluency in Arabic, he soon formed the Libyan Arab Force Commando, LAFC, a small unit of British and Libyan soldiers conducting operations behind Axis lines in the Jebel Akhdar of Cyrenaica, including one particularly destructive action on 19 May 1942, in which Peniakoff, now a major, and his men destroyed a huge fuel dump at Al-Quba, 30 miles to the west of Derna. Raid on Barche with the LRDG. After the LAFC's disbandment, Peniakoff took part in a long-range desert group raid on an Italian airfield at Barche, Operation Caravan, in September 1942, during which the raiders destroyed an estimated 35 aircraft, though the major sustained an injury, resulting in the loss of a finger. His exemplary service earned him the Military Cross. On October 14, while on convalescent leave, Major Peniakoff went to Middle East headquarters in Cairo to call on Lieutenant Colonel John Hackett, the coordinator of British raiding operations for the 8th Army, to discuss Hackett's plans for his future role. It must be pointed out that at this point, Peniakoff's desire was not to form yet another new commando unit in the theatre, adding to the several already in existence. He railed at what he saw as the unnecessary proliferation of similar units in the North African theatre, quote, all tripping over one another behind the enemy lines. Indeed, his wish was to be allowed to form a new squadron in the LRDG, given the similarity of their mission profiles and the fact that he thought they were, quote, the finest body of men in any army. No. 1 Demolition Squadron. Subsequently, after trying unsuccessfully as it turned out to be allowed to form an extra squadron of the LRDG, and with the support of Lieutenant Colonel Hackett, Peniakoff was persuaded to establish No. 1 Demolition Squadron with the initial aim of continuing to target Field Marshal Rommel's fuel supplies in support of General Montgomery's planned offensive at El Alamein. Middle Eastern headquarters' confidence in Major Peniakoff stemmed then, as mentioned, from his proven abilities in raiding enemy supply lands and destroying their fuel dumps. Added to this was his knowledge of the Jebel Akhdar, the mountainous plateau between Benghazi in the west and Derna in the east, and his connections with the local Senussi Arabs, which meant that he could, in Peniakoff's own words, quote, get information and reach places denied to our other raiders. This perhaps sums up best how Peniakoff at least saw his new unit as differing from the LRDG and SAS, etc. The new commando force was the smallest independent unit of the British Army at 23 men, just a tad smaller than his previous unit, the LAFC. Its founding officers were friends who had served together in the old Libyan Arab force. Popski himself as commanding officer, Robert Park Yunnie, and Jean Canary, a Frenchman. Canary would eventually become Peniakoff's second in command. Popski's private army. In the days following, Lieutenant Colonel Hackett asked Peniakoff to give his new unit a cover name, but Peniakoff delayed. Eventually, Hackett grew frustrated at his faltering and famously stated, quote, "You had better find a name quick, or we shall call you Popski's Private Army." The rest, as they say, is history. Popski's Private Army, or PPA, became operational then, on 10 December 1942. It was quite unlike any other unit, though perhaps the LRDG came closest, and was run on an extremely informal basis, even more so than the LRDG, which was saying something. Officer recruits reverted to lieutenant on joining, and other ranks reverted to private. There were no drills or saluting. Every man messed in together, emphasising equality and initiative, and was expected to know what he was meant to do and get on with it. And there was only one punishment for any failure: to be returned to unit. The PPA's cap badge featured an astrolabe, a fitting device symbolising navigation and exploration, taken from a design he'd been using as a bookplate, and the name of several of the pre-war boats that he'd owned. Outfitting and training the new unit. The tiny new force was outfitted with 4 jeeps, armed with twin 303 caliber Vickers K machine guns, and 2 3-ton trucks armed with single Vickers Ks and, similarly to the LRDG, carried sufficient supplies for extended missions. In LRDG fashion, PPA would train men in desert navigation, using a sun compass, theodolite, astronomical position tables, and maps to determine precise locations. PPA's operations in North Africa would focus on reconnaissance, sabotage, and intelligence gathering, often collaborating with the LRDG and SAS. Context: strategic situation in Tunisia, early 1943. One of the most daring and effective operations conducted by Popski's private army in North Africa occurred in early 1943 during the campaign against the Axis Marath line in southern Tunisia. This mission showcased its capacity for reconnaissance and ability to work closely with the long-range desert group. By early 1943, the Axis forces in North Africa were caught in a pincer movement. Following the Allied Operation Torch landings in November 1942, American and British forces advanced eastward from Morocco and Algeria. Simultaneously, the British 8th Army under General Bernard Montgomery was pushing westward from Egypt and Libya. This convergence aimed to trap the Axis forces in Tunisia. The Marath Line, a series of fortifications in southern Tunisia, became a focal point of resistance for the Axis, as it blocked the coastal route north from Gabis to Sfax. Discovery of Wilder's Gap. In January 1943, Captain Nick Wilder of the Long Range Desert Group led a patrol into the Matmata Hills of southern Tunisia. During this mission, he identified a previously uncharted route through the hills, later named Wilder's Gap. This discovery was significant, as it offered a potential path for Allied forces to outflank the formidable Axis defences of the Marath Line. Joint Reconnaissance Mission. Following Wilder's discovery, a combined force consisting of 11 vehicles, including jeeps and LRDG Chevrolets, made up of Popski's private army and an LRDG patrol, T2, under Lieutenant Ron Tinker, was hurriedly put together to investigate the feasibility of moving larger forces through Wilder's Gap and beyond. Their mission was to assess whether the terrain could support the passage of an armoured corps. The patrol crossed into Tunisia on 18 January 1943, following Wilder's route. Advancing through the gap. The reconnaissance confirmed that a route existed beyond Wilder's Gap that was navigable for large armoured units. The patrol successfully traversed the gap and advanced through a corridor that skirted the Matmata Mountains to the right and the sand dunes of the Grand Erg to the left. The patrol then left behind all the trucks and most of the men at a place on the map called Quaret Ali, about 20 miles southwest of Kasarilin, just inside the sands of the Grand Erg. From there, Peniakoff and Tinka set off in 4 jeeps in a northeasterly direction, passing through the Tabaga Gap, a low mountain pass separating the Matmata and Jebel Tabaga hills, leading into the coastal plain north and east of the desert terrain. From there, they advanced within about 25 miles of Gabis, skirting the western flank of the Marath line in the process. This movement demonstrated the viability of an outflanking manoeuvre through the gap. Betrayal. Shortly after completing the reconnaissance part of their operation, Popski and Tinka were betrayed by local Arabs, and the joint patrol went on to lose all the trucks they had left camped at Quarat Ali, including the wireless truck, in a sustained German air attack. However, they made the decision to send Tinka ahead on a northwesterly heading with 3 jeeps, 12 men and several casualties of the air attack to Tozeur, a French-held town just north of the shot Jerid Salt Lake, where they could pass on their precious news to the 8th Army. Peniakoff and the balance of the patrol, 37 men, plus the 2 remaining jeeps, with enough petrol for perhaps a few days' travel, set off walking in Tinka's jeep tracks, with the hopes of being picked up by him on his return from Tozeur with a rescue party. Over the following 7 days, Popski and his men walked approximately 150 miles before being met by Tinka and his returning jeeps. The next day saw them all safe and sound back at Tozeur. 8th Army had received the patrol's precious news about the viability of the corridor from Wilder's Gap to the Tabaga. Popski could relax at last. Strategic impact. The reconnaissance by PPA and Tinka's LRDG patrol of the route through Wilder's Gap and the corridor into the Matmata Hills and then through the Tabaga Gap enabled Montgomery's 8th Army to plan its outflanking move around the Marath line. Operation Pugilist, the direct assault on said line, was slated for 19 March 1943 and would face stiff resistance amid the challenging terrain. However, based on the successful reconnaissance, the New Zealand Corps was able to be sent off on Monty's left hook, the flanking manoeuvre through the Tabaga Gap. Though initially held by Axis forces at Tabaga, reinforcements, including the British 1st Armoured Division, will be sent to support them during the Supercharged 2 portion of Pugilist. The success of this manoeuvre was critical for the Allies, contributing to the eventual breach of Axis defences and their retreat from the Marath line. Allied forces were able thus to continue the advance toward Tunis and the Anglo-American forces beyond, ultimately leading to the end of the North African campaign. This operation exemplified PPA's strategic value in conducting unconventional warfare, demonstrating how small, well-led units could achieve significant strategic effects through reconnaissance and collaboration with other special forces. Indeed, Montgomery himself, in his commendation of the LRDG, and one might include the PPA by extension, said, quote, "Without your careful and reliable reports, the launching of the left hook by the New Zealand Division would have been a leap in the dark." Italian campaign and growth. In the summer of 1943, Popski's private army expanded, recruiting volunteers from the LRDG, SAS, Commandos and Royal Armoured Corps, growing to approximately 35 men. They prepared for operations in Italy, and although plans to use gliders for deployment were cancelled, in September 1943, an advanced patrol of PPA sailed aboard the USS Boise to the southeastern port of Taranto and moved inland, where their jeep patrols uncovered the previously unknown weakness of German 1st Parachute Division rearguard elements opposing the 1st Airborne south of Massafra on the Bari Road. This success led to Major Peniakoff being allowed to further expand PPA, and between 80 and 100 men were deployed during the remainder of the Italian campaign. 3 fighting patrols, each of around 18 men in 6 jeeps, and 1 tactical headquarters of 4 jeeps were formed, all operating with considerable autonomy. Each jeep was equipped with 50 and 30 caliber machine guns, providing substantial firepower. There's even photographic evidence of at least one jeep being armed with a flamethrower, a fearsome addition to the PPA arsenal. The men trained intensively in amphibious mountain and parachute operations, as well as demolition, counter-demolition, reconnaissance and intelligence gathering. Operating along the Adriatic coast, PPA conducted raids, reconnaissance and supported partisan activities. They formed alliances with local resistance groups, notably the Settimio Garavini detachment of the 28th Brigade, Mario Godini in Ravenna. Liberation of Camarino. One notable operation undertaken by PPA during the Italian campaign was the liberation of the town of Camarino in July 1944. This mission exemplified PPA's strategic use of intelligence gathering, collaboration with local partisans, and guerrilla tactics to disrupt German operations and facilitate Allied advances. Intriguingly, the actor Christopher Lee was attached to the unit around this time as an RAF intelligence officer and would work with them until early 1945. In the summer of 1944, PPA was operating in the Marche region of central Italy. The unit aimed to cross the river Chienti and target the German-held town of Camarino, which served as a headquarters for a German mountain division. However, the bridge over the Chienti had been destroyed and German forces were entrenched along the opposite bank. PPA, unable to cross directly, established a base in the mountain village of Bolognola, where they encountered a group of approximately 300 Italian partisans led by Major Ferri and his brother Giuseppe, a history professor from the University of Pisa. Recognizing the mutual benefits, PPA and the partisans formed an alliance, combining local knowledge with PPA's military expertise. From their position in Bolognola, PPA and the partisans conducted nightly raids against German convoys on the far side of the Chienti, utilizing the cover of darkness and the element of surprise. These persistent attacks compelled the German forces to withdraw from the river area. Seizing the opportunity, PPA searched for suitable places whence they could ford the Chienti, and then advanced to the Potenza River 7 miles beyond Camarino, where they destroyed another bridge to further hinder German movements. Through coordinated assaults and deceptive tactics, for example, setting up several radio operators transmitting regular fake signals purporting to be nearby 8th Army formations, and firing their jeeps' heavy Browning machine guns at Camarino's stone walls from multiple locations in the surrounding forest, they successfully convinced the German commander that a significant Allied force was encroaching, leading to their chaotic withdrawal, whence the enemy, since the bridge was gone, were forced to abandon all of their transport and heavy equipment in their rush to ford the Potenza. Popski sent jeeps forward to harry the withdrawal, and these managed to kill around 100 German soldiers, plus, reportedly, the enemy commander himself. Subsequently, PPA and the partisans entered Camarino without resistance. In the aftermath, Peniakoff appointed Giuseppe Ferri as the civilian governor of Camarino and his brother as the commander of the partisans. PPA remained in the town for several days to assist in establishing a civilian administration until the arrival of the Allied military government of occupied territory, AMGOT. This operation not only liberated a strategic location, but also demonstrated the effectiveness of PPA's unconventional warfare tactics and their ability to collaborate with local resistance movements to achieve significant military objectives. Operations in the winter of 1944-1945. During the harsh winter campaigns of 1944-1945, Popski's private army operated ahead of Allied lines, supporting British, Canadian, Indian and Polish units. They identified targets for Allied airstrikes, disrupted German rear area activity, secured key bridges, captured enemy personnel and equipment, and even accepted the surrender of the German garrison at Chioggia. The unit frequently collaborated with other special forces, including the LRDG, SAS, SOE's No. 1 Special Force, Phantom, A-Force and the OSS, while informally integrating a diverse mix of strays, Russian, Italian and German POWs, along with Italian regulars and partisans from both Royalist and Communist factions. In November 1944, Peniakoff, by now a lieutenant colonel, was awarded the Distinguished Service Order, or DSO, for operations with the 27th Lancers and Italian partisans of the 28th Garibaldi Brigade during the liberation of Ravenna. though he would lose his left hand to a German rifle grenade. PPA concluded the war in dramatic fashion by driving jeeps across St. Mark's Square in Venice, becoming the only wheeled vehicles ever to do so, before disbanding on 14 September 1945. In its final months, the unit helped hunt for Heinrich Himmler, disarmed Italian partisans, and deterred Tito's forces from advancing into Austrian and Italian territory. By war's end, the small unit had earned a Distinguished Service Order, a Distinguished Conduct Medal, 6 military crosses, 10 military medals, and 14 mentions in dispatches. Legacy. Popski's private army's effectiveness stemmed from its small size, mobility, the autonomy granted to its members, and effective use of local sources of information. Their use of heavily armed jeeps in a similar way to that of the SAS allowed rapid, flexible operations behind enemy lines. Peniakoff's leadership and the unit's unconventional tactics left a lasting impact on special operations doctrine. He went on to document his experiences in his excellent memoir, Private Army, published in 1950. Popski's private army exemplified innovation and adaptability in warfare, demonstrating how small, well-led units could achieve significant strategic effects through unconventional means. I hope you enjoyed watching this episode about the legendary Popski's private army. Please consider liking and subscribing for similar content. See you soon.